Hey guys, and welcome to my new series, TheLakeGuardian plays some games and then talks about them, because why not? In this video I'm going to be going over the Pokémon trading card game. No, not that Pokémon trading card game. This Pokémon trading card game. You know, the one for the Nintendo Game Boy Color. I don't actually know much about the game before I played it. You see, I like Pokémon. So one day, I thought, I'm going to play every Pokémon game. And, you know, this includes all of the spin-offs. So this does in fact mean that you can hope for videos on Crystal, Yellow, and of course, everyone's favourite, just for reference, I will be playing the enhanced versions and the remakes for each region. So for Kanto I'm going to be playing Yellow, Leaf Green, and Let's Go Eevee, because those are the ones I chose. Anyway, enough about that. As someone who actually does play this TCG in real life, I thought I might enjoy this, so let's start playing. You play as some random kid who lives in a world where the entire world is based off Pokémon cards. Not Pokémon themselves, just the cards. Just to be clear here, it's not actually clear if Pokemon are real in this universe, just the cards. Anyway, like, it's some weird reality where everything that we do is to do with Pokemon cards. There's actual scientific communities in this game that are dedicated to Pokemon cards. I mean, imagine some kind of weird reality where everything we do is based on Uno or something. Anyway, our main character here, who I named Red, is super into Pokemon cards and wants to get a hold of the legendary cards. What do the legendary cards do? What Pokemon are they? I don't know. I can assume that it's Mew, Zapdos, Articuno, Moltres, and Mewtwo there, because those are what are legendary. Those were the Pokemon that were considered legendary when this game came out. So Red goes through the science lab and taught the ways of the funny Pikachu card game by this guy called Dr. Mason, who, by the way, who has the same Japanese name as Professor Egad, so I trust this guy already. By the way, it seems that I was actually wrong about what the legendary cards are, because I recently got a Moltres from a booster pack that was some Pikachu-obsessed girl just gave to me for beating me. By the way, that's how you get new cards, is you beat people, and then they'll give you a booster pack or two, or maybe even more. You get to choose a deck, which is framed off one of the free Kanto starters. I obviously chose Bulbasaur, and you're off. I quickly found this game follows the same plot as the main series games, kind of. There's 8 clubs or gyms which are each themed around a specific type, and then there's the Elite Four for you afterwards, and it's kind of fun. If you enjoy playing the TCG in real life, you'll probably like this game too. But there are some gripes I've got, there are some issues that I need to go over. First of all, the battles take way too long, and to prove that, all of the footage used for this video is a single battle, and this whole video is probably not even as long as the battle that I had, but they take way too long. They average at around about 14 minutes, and which doesn't really matter based on the opponent. So if you're playing on an emulator, like I was, I do recommend using speed up hacks. And even worse than this, most matches are limited to 4 prize cards instead of 6, and the gym battles are for 6 prize cards instead of 4, and usually take up even more time, even up to like 18 minutes, which is kind of crazy. Anyway, this game actually reminds me of a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Even though I've actually never played a Yu-Gi-Oh! Game, or watched an anime on Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't play the card game either. I've never done anything Yu-Gi-Oh! Related. I probably think this because the battles are called duels, which is hilarious, and it's very obvious that they just took that from Yu-Gi-Oh! To make it sound cool. The controls are good, and the menus are really well made. They're super detailed. Something that surprised me was the attacks actually have animations, which is pretty cool, and very unexpected for a Game Boy Color game based around a Pokemon card game. There's a lot of reused assets from Red and Blue, even with the main character from Red and Blue, Red. His sprite is used as an NPC a couple times, and a lot of the sprites used in games are either just ripped straight from Red and Blue, or slightly modified. The game is actually quite challenging, but you'll often lose to bad luck, but at least that's what it feels like to me, because there's a lot of quite literal coin tosses. At least there's no bull crap with like critical hits. I mean, can you imagine that one? That would be a nightmare. And what happens is you start with your chosen deck, and then each time you battle, you get 2 random booster packs to increase your arsenal of Pokemon cards. It makes you feel a little bit like Yugi from Yu-Gi-Oh! Make with Ash Ketchum, which I absolutely love. There's a guy in the lab where Egad's long-lost brother is, and if you beat this guy, he only gives you energies, which is really nice to have, because it's hard to come across energies in this game. Anyway, we have to talk the names of the NPCs. We gotta talk about the NPCs. And I don't know if you guys have played Pokemon Colosseum. If you haven't, you should. It's a game where pretty much every single character has a weird nickname, like Norts or Scrub. Those are all names of real characters, by the way. Anyway, the Pokemon trading card game doesn't have this problem, but has the complete opposite issue, and there's a serious lack of creative names. There aren't any cool names, and they're just standard white male names like Joshua and Amy. I'm pretty sure I've actually already battled 2 different Andrews, and as of writing, I'm an hour into the game. How about some more interesting ones? For example, when I was a kid and I first played through Alpha Sapphire, I found Tate and Liza, the psychic type gym leaders, really interesting, because those were names I hadn't heard of before. Obviously, some Pokemon character names aren't real names, like I don't know anyone called Winnoa or whatever, because that's not a real name, but a lot of them are real names, modified, which are taken from, real life, and are all interesting names instead of just Andrew, Joshua, Amy. There's actually one of the Elite Four is actually called Amy, which is one of the least intimidating names I've ever heard for a Pokemon game. I mean, like, the Pokemon series is full of interesting names, but none of them are here, weirdly enough. There aren't any funny pun names like calling someone Biff for a fighting type Pokemon duelist. By the way, that's what they're called. No, they're not Pokemon trainers, they're Pokemon duelists. I kind of get why they're called that, because it's kind of like how in Pokemon Legends Arceus, they're called Pokemon wielders, because the term for a Pokemon trainer didn't really exist at the time. There doesn't really seem to be a real story, other than the fact that our boy Red wants to be the very best like no one ever was. To catch them is his real test, but to train them is his cause. I would go on, but I won't. He has to beat all the clubs and the Elite Four to get the legendary cards. Still no clue what they are, as I also got a Mew after fighting a random grass-type Pokemon duelist. There's no actual leveling system in the game, so you can do whichever gym you want in whatever order. That's right, Pokemon Scarlet. The Pokemon trading card game was much ahead of you, even though it came out, like 20 years beforehand. Anyway, you just kind of have to choose a certain type that the gym leader is weak to, and orientate your entire deck around that. Hey, at least there's no I'm not complaining. There's no grinding, which is great. The gym leaders actually use 6 prize cards instead of 4, as I mentioned earlier, but you can potentially sweep them with one Pokemon, which I've done a couple of times and it's super satisfying. As long as you've got right energies, obviously. It's actually a little jarring to walk into a gym or a club or whatever they're called, because they're all walking in place like it's some kind of a weird cult ritual. The club leaders can be challenging, and they do use some weird and interesting stuff in their teams, like the kind of stuff that a boss in Pokemon Colosseum was, and I love that game. For example, while writing, I saw a club leader put a defender, which is an item reduces damage taken by 20 on their Jigglypuff, which had double edge, which does 20 self damage. So they put it on there to neutralize the self damage, which I thought was pretty cool. I don't know if it was coincidental or whatever, but I think it was cool nonetheless. Anyway, once you get to beat a gym leader, you get the 8 badges. But if you lose, however, it's a real big shame, because you're sent to the Shadow Realm, where your soul is tortured forever. Now let's go over a couple of the gyms. There's electric, grass, fire, water, science, which whatever that means, fighting, rock, and psychic. The science gym actually appears to be themed around artificial Pokemon like Grimer, Porygon, and fucking Mewtwo. Yeah, you heard me right. They've got a Mewtwo in a gym in a Pokemon game. This is like early game stuff too. It's just a Mewtwo. 50% of the time you can just skip all of the other Pokemon duelists in a gym and go straight to the gym leader, which is kind of ridiculous, and if you haven't played an actual real Pokemon game before, you don't usually do that. Usually you have to go through all the gym trainers or some kind of puzzle or whatever, unless you're in Johto in Gold and Silver's Kanto. Anyway, it took me about an average of 2 or 3 tries to reach the gym leader. I'm pretty sure it's got something to do with the luck, because you don't always draw the right cards that you want. Sometimes you'll draw a load of crappy cards or whatever. And after defeating the gym leader and sending their soul straight to the Shadow Realm,
looks like you're going to the Shadow Realm, Jimbo.
You get their badge. Like in the main series, you need 8 to finish the game, then you can challenge the Elite Four. Now, do you remember the legendary cards? Like, turns out I was right, but only kind of. Instead of them being legendary cards, they're actually legendary decks, each of them revolving around either Articuno, Zapdos, Moltres, and Mewtwo, and they are hyper difficult. Like, it takes you way too many times to beat them. Like, it took me about 5 or 6, which is way too many. Anyway, you'll eventually banish their asses into the Shadow Realm, enabling you to use the legendary decks for yourself. However, there's a serious lack of content into the game, as after you do this, there's no reason to do anything other than get all the other Pokemon cards, and there isn't really anything preventing you to just immediately challenging the gym leaders. There's also no evil team in this, which is weird because I'm pretty sure the box art, specifically the back of it, actually talks about fighting villainous people, which you don't do in the game, unless you count the science team leader, who has a Mewtwo, which is evil because it's too hard. Yeah, there isn't much just preventing you from progressing other than the gym leaders, which you can just pick off really quickly. I'd say that you actually really only need to do about 20 duels in the entire game, which is the bulk of the game, because that's like 20 multiplied by 14, which is the amount of minutes that you spend dueling, which is a big number. Too much for me, really. Anyway, it took me about a weekend to finish. Once you've done that, other than getting all the Pokemon cards, which I don't really want to do, there's really nothing else to do. If you enjoy the Pokemon card game, I recommend this to you, but to a casual Pokemon fan who maybe played Scarlet and Violet or Ruby and Sapphire or whatever, not judging you based on your Pokemon games, they're all good. You can skip this one if you want. I personally give this game a 5 out of 10, which may get me killed because there's probably a fan base behind this game, but that is a sacrifice I am willing to make. Anyway, goodbye, have a good day, and don't forget to never stop using your noggin or whatever. I don't know. I need to come up with a catchphrase.